And we're back on the Fowler Show. Now, folks, you know I'm going to continue talking about this until the cows come home. But when we have this conversation, and I think, we'll be better for it later on, but when we have this conversation about student loan debt in this country and the impact that it has on our economy and the impact that it has on students and middle-class families and working families, you realize this is one of the most pressing issues of our day. And sadly, nobody is talking about it. Not a soul. No one. And I blab about it all the time, but we're joined on the show today by a good friend of mine, James Lewis, a Democratic strategist and a millennial as well. James, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Richard. Hello, Fowler Nation. How's everyone tonight?
Yeah, shout out to Fowler Nation, man. So tell me, why is nobody in Washington having the conversation about the student loan debt crisis in this country?
Unfortunately, right now, there's really only 3 people that are having this conversation. Last year, we had President Obama all about the "don't double my rate" conversation. Went on Twitter, forced everyone. This year, it's just Senator Hegan, Stabenow, and Shaheen. They've started this petition, but no one else is really catching on. Is this not an election year issue? Are we not vying for the student vote, and that's why the White House isn't interested in this issue? Something that they're only going to care about quadrennially when they need young voters to come out to the polls. I think that we really have some champions in the Senate, and we just need to give them support and get some more people on their side.
And I think that's a sad part, though. I think we have some champions in the Senate. I think we have some champions in the House. I think you have your Karen Basses in the House. You have your Frederica Wilsons in the House. But there doesn't seem to be a big push from the Democratic Party. And I think a lot of people argue that maybe the Democratic Party is more concerned about the senior citizen vote, or the Democratic Party is more concerned about the labor vote, and so they've left the students out of this equation. Is that the right assumption to make?
Unfortunately, I think that is right. There is no millennial lobby in Washington. There's no one pounding their doors, whereas other constituency groups do have those people that are up there on the Hill every day, that have the former staffers, the former members working on their staff as lobbyists. There is no millennial lobbying group.
And you think if we had a millennial lobbying group, we would solve all of our student loan debt problems in this country?
I don't think it would quite get us there, but I think it would go a long way. If members of the Senate and the House and the White House were hearing from young people day in and day out about this issue and all the issues. Like, they constantly hear about Medicare coming from senior citizens, which is great. Medicare is an important program. But there's no one up there talking to them about the amount of student loan debt. There's over $1 trillion of student loan debt in this country. That's more than credit card debt. And there are people constantly up on the Hill talking about credit card debt and how it's burgeoning middle-class families, which is exactly what it's doing. But what's really hurting our economy is the student loan debt. All of this debt, and these students are, that are turning into their 30s, are putting off starting families, buying cars, buying houses, because they have all this hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt.
And the interesting thing about that point, Jimmy, and the reason why I don't understand why Republicans aren't on board with finding a way to relieve the student loan debt in this country is because the argument the Republicans constantly make is, we don't want to put this debt on our children. If you're a fiscal conservative, your thought is, in the short term, or my mom would call this, penny smart and pound foolish, in that in the short term, making cuts to student loan rates and mounting up student loan debt and trying to find no relief student loan debt solves some of your problems and allows you to sort of deal with the deficit issues. But in the long term, it really crushes our economy because we don't have the ability to, the millennial generation won't have the ability to make spending choices, they won't have the ability to buy homes, they won't have the ability to get cars, on and on and on and on and on. And you think to yourself, wait a minute, isn't it better for us to sort of bail them out now, thinking of the return we can get on our investment later?
Exactly. It makes perfect sense. But, this is Washington. What makes sense isn't what happens.
That's very true.
This is a great idea. This is what we should do, and it's not what they're going to do. If you look, you see people who are graduating with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt with just a bachelor's degree. Then you add on people that are going to master's degrees, which you basically need now for any professional level job, or people that are going to medical school, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. We have to, part of the Affordable Care Act was putting aside money to help students go to medical school to become family care doctors because the cost is so insanely high and there's no return on investment. We need to be, we need to not piecemeal this. We need to actually solve this problem of student loan debt. And we need to address while that's happening the rising cost of college.
Yeah, I think you're completely right on that, Jimmy. I think those two things aren't mutually exclusive. And I think, it's almost counterintuitive to say we're going to deal with the rising cost of college and deal with those entering college first before we deal with those who are already out of college in the workforce that are burdened down and labored down with debt.
Exactly. I paid my student loans honestly before I got on here. And I was looking at these numbers and I'm just like, really? Like, the number seems to keep going up and up. Like, that was not particularly expensive. And I was lucky I had tuition to the university I went to. So I was just taking out for, incidentals, room and board, that sort of stuff. And I still owe tens of thousands of dollars.
And I think that's a sad part. Now, folks out there in Fowler Nation don't know, but there's a project that me and Jimmy work on together, and he's a good friend to the Fowler Nation, a good friend of mine. And one of our projects is just that. It's about empowering millennials, right? And I think at the beginning of the interview, I think Jimmy said it best. We call him Jimmy. His real name is James. We call him Jimmy. So I slipped in and out of it there, folks. But we really don't have a youth lobby. We don't have an organized youth movement where we can take on the issues that face our generation and face our voting demographic and solve them. And so one project we've embarked on together is the Young Informed Memo. Jimmy, tell us.
Yeah.
I already know, but tell us what the Young Informed Memo is.
So the Young Informed Progressive Memo, YIP, comes out.
I forgot the progressive part.
Oh, progressive, yeah, progressive P. It comes out. We try and do it bi-weekly, but unfortunately, sometimes there's just not enough going on in Washington because it's Washington, and maybe Eric Cantor, scheduled a vacation. That they're really apt to do that sort of thing. So, but we try and get it out, and it covers policy issues. It provides you with 5 framing to talk about an issue, how to connect with people, how to illustrate, and how to expose what the other side is saying, and then all the facts you would need to know about it in a section we call the mind dump. And then my favorite part is they say, we say, real people say, because what people in Washington say, we all live in this really strange little beltway here. And what actually people are out there saying is very different. So we provided they say, which is generally a quote from someone. This week was about the student loan crisis, and we included a quote from Mitt Romney that was, why don't you borrow money from your parents? Maybe because your parents don't have the money to give you to go to college. And then we included a quote from President Obama talking about student loan debt for the we say. And the real people talking about, really, Congress, you want to make it more expensive for me to go to school in the long term, and you still want me to pay my taxes. You still want me to get a job. You're trying to encourage me to buy a house. You want me to start a family. You want me to be a contributing member of society, but you're going to make it more difficult for me to pay back my student loans in the long term. So, a realistic view of what policies in Washington actually do and mean for everyone else in this country.
I love that, and I think one of the reasons, and I think you can speak to this, Jimmy, is why we created this, is the whole idea so millennials both in the Beltway and outside the Beltway can use it. Yes, it's great when you're on television, or great when you're, on Fowler Nation, but how else can people use this as a tool in, their local, in parts of the country like, Collington, Oklahoma?
So the most important part about this is, the really way that we organize our generation on these issues is we got to talk to our friends. We live on Facebook, we live on Twitter, we live in coffee shops with our friends. This is a really solid way of communicating these issues, not only on TV and on the radio, which we're lucky enough to get to do on a regular basis, or in letters and op-eds that we write, but talking to other millennials and saying, this is the problem, this is what we need to be doing. When we call up our congressman, this is what I want you to do. This is why this is important to me. Giving them the actual facts and being able to say these things in that kind of quick, soundbitey way is what is really effective. And I'm just going to do a real quick plug for it here before you get to your next question. But this is something you're interested in having in your inbox. You can register with us. It's yipmemo@gmail.com. So YIP-memo@gmail.com. Give us an email and we'll happily get you on the list.
I love it. Give us an email. We'll get you on the list. And this is a project, this is a labor of love between Jimmy and I that we do for the broader progressive movement just because we care. We're like American Express, wherever you want to be. Jimmy, as you already know, the fight continues on the student loan debt crisis stuff. Hopefully, we will see a resolution soon. But unfortunately, I'm not as optimistic as I used to be just because I think Washington is so defunct that we will get nothing done and students will continue to suffer. We appreciate you being on with us so much.
No worries. Thanks for having me. And I mean, there is something people can do right now, and it's stopstudentloanhike.com. You can go sign Senator Shaheen Stabenow and Keegan's petition. So let Congress know exactly what you think. Give them a call.
I love it. Let Congress know exactly what you think. James Lewis, i.e. Jimmy, Democratic Strategist, and co-author of the YIP Memo. Thanks so much for being on the Fowler Show. We really appreciate you, buddy. We'll be right back after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Thanks,